text messages.
And you got my email about the next 3 books.
Yep.
So we should probably just have a one-off discussion on that. We can do that later this week. Just you and me have a call.
Awesome. We just went live. So we're just getting things set up here. And yeah, we are good to go. You can hear me fine, right, Aaron?
Yeah, I hear you fine. Hear me?
Perfect. You're coming in loud and clear.
Good.
So it's funny because I've been down this road, not with the same animal, but you brought up you were deworming your goats this weekend, and as much as you don't think people want to hear about that, that is kind of hilarious because I've had to deworm horses, and I know how well that went. So how did the goats go?
Well, I relived the days. I played Pop Warner football for 2 years. I was a lineman, but I always wanted to be a linebacker. And we have these two goats that are just absolutely they will not be caught for anything. They'll do anything that they can. And I had one goat ran in between my son and I stuck my arm out and arm tackled him. And I was like, yes, I still got it. Still can run him down like the best of them. So, I mean, I'm not, the goat was fine. I mean, sometimes you have to go through this for those that are, animal, activists or whatnot. The goat was fine. Sometimes you just kind of got to, do those things because he just wasn't going down. But yeah, stuck my arm out, just wrapped him up and scared him. I was like, yes, back in the day, man, I could do this, so. And the Packers draft was so abysmal. I was like, throw my hat in the ring. Maybe I can be a inside linebacker for him next year.
Yeah, get out there, do a little goat workout for linebacker. I see it.
Yeah. But other than that, it was fine. Woke up this morning and we actually forgot to secure the gate, so I had 2 pigs and a goat out in the yard running around. So
just chilling. They didn't take off. They were just hanging out.
No, they don't take off. They just they walk around. They roam. So.
They know where dinner comes from every night.
It's a good way to start the morning when you see 2 of your pigs running around your front yard and a goat in the front yard as well. So definitely a great way to start the day. So, but we got them back. It's fine. We're part of the farm life. It's better the goats than the horses.
I love it. All right, enough farm talk. Let's dive in for anybody that's joining us. So welcome back to the Rosetta Reading Club, Week 5, Episode 5, as we continue into Great at Work. And, let's take it from there. Aaron, I'm going to hand you over the reins. Let's take it on.
All right, let's start with that first slide there. Again, it's another snapshot from my entrepreneur mindset like we had last week. And this is a good picture, I think, that really states to what we're trying to do here. And it's not so much reading, just reading books and just feeling like you're muscling through books and maybe you feel like your head is swelling a little bit. It's what you do with those learnings, those lessons, those teachings. That's how you really apply this and make the bank and improve yourself. So you get some of these guys that are like, oh yeah, I can read a book a week. Well, that's great, but what did you retain? Did you discuss it? Did you apply it? That's the real, gift of these books. I mean, you can read the fiction novels all you want about the romances that don't exist, but when you read books like Great at Work, I mean, they're solely made to help you be a better person. And if you're just reading it and letting it go, then you're not doing yourself a good service. So.
Yeah.
This picture really brings that message home.
I can't agree with that more because I am, hint to a book I really like, The Challenger Sale, but that's exactly it. I mean, I've done some of these in the past with other people and that, and they're always like, oh, we can do a lot more books than we're doing, but the fact of the matter is that this book. Let me get the cover off here. You can see I've got my yellow Post-it notes, and they've got notes on the back sides of them. I don't know how well you can see that. But, just even this page here, I've got writings in the column, and it's all over every page. I mean, I've written in it, I've underlined, I've highlighted, and I've read this book, 3 different times just to retain 30% of it, right? I mean, there's still times I go back to it, and that's why I mark the pages with the Post-it notes. Is I know the section I want to go into for the tidbits that I want to get from it. So yeah, that's huge, because we can read and fly through it all we want, but unless we are actually implementing a learning process by reading it, writing it down, and going out and trying that tactic, you're not going to retain it.
Yeah, and I think what's really good is when you actually do go out and apply it, and even if you fail, I mean, at least you tried something different, something that's out of your realm of things that you've done in the past. And, when it works, when it clicks, that's really cool. But even if it doesn't click, I mean, hey, that's actually a really life learned lesson. That's a really sustainable thing, because I think if you keep doing it, it will work. But at least you took what you learned and you applied. I mean, that's why we go to school, right? I mean, we go to school to learn things that help us apply to our life. It's the same thing with reading. It's education beyond education is what it is.
100%. I couldn't agree more.
So enough of that. Yes, we are operating today in Section 5, Fight and Unite, which I'm super excited about. I think this is one of the best sections in the book. It talks a lot about effective meetings and effective team management. So we're going to start like we always do with that Work Harder convention. The Work Harder convention in this chapter says to increase team performance, solicit only, and I underline only, because this is oftentimes what we do. We only solicit the participation of the brightest and the best. So we bring our A team to our meetings. Why? Because they're going to tell us everything that we want to hear. They are not going to force objection. They are not going to bring in alternate ideas. They're just going to be a bunch of yes men or yes women. We do this so often, and it's an absolute failure on our parts to do these things.
Yeah.
We maximize effort through plenty of meetings, and if the meetings fail, we just schedule another one. So we get a whole bunch of people in the room, and we say, okay, here's what we need to do. We need to think about strategic planning for next year or next 5 years, whatever. And then all of a sudden, you look over across the room, and then the next person says, Tom. Tom says, hey, well, what do you want to do? Okay, well, I don't know. That's why we're having a meeting. Eventually, you come up with ideas. They fail. They blow up in your face. And then you're like, okay, well, let's just have another meeting. We do the same thing over and over again. We are the perpetual hamster in the wheel, just running over and over and over again. Absolute failure on our part. I've seen that so many times, and it's an absolute mistake.
Yep.
So this book brings the principle, which is, it is common sense. I mean, you're not going to, this isn't like a big aha moment, but oftentimes, like I said, we do this without even thinking. We have these meetings with yes men, but what we should be doing is we should have SMART meetings. And SMART is not the acronym SMART, it's just a SMART meeting. We need to prioritize diversity over talent. That doesn't mean that we should have people of different races and creeds in our meeting. It just means that we should bring a diverse team to the table. We should bring in our production people if we're having a production meeting. We should even bring in, our delivery team, maybe our internal sales team. We should diversify that whole entire team. If we're on the project side, we should bring in our different landscape crews, not just the crew leaders, but the guys that are actually doing the work. We should bring in the accounting staff as well. Anybody that has relevancy, a stake in the game, not a foot in the game, but just a pinky in the game, they should be a part of that meeting because they're going to provide some kind of input.
Yeah, it's from the out. It's something. A lot of that's just what does it look like from the outside, because it's going to be a lot different than if you're living it every day. If I'm in the production team or on the projects team, you see things every day, and you just get used to. You get in a rut, right? You're going to do things that you're used to and that commonality. But when you get other people involved, they're seeing things from a different direction, a different light that can kind of help you go, oh my gosh, yeah, I completely missed that. That would be a huge help, right? I mean, that 100%.
Mm-hmm. The power of outside eyes is an absolute unmeasurable power. And by outside eyes, I don't mean an outside consultant. You don't have to hire a $500,000 consultant to come in and tell you how to do your job. Bring your wife in, bring your kids in, bring your husband in who does something different than what you do. Have them look at something and get their real-time input on. You'll be amazed at what they bring to the table. Outside eyes is the greatest exercise that I don't care if you run a landscape business or a manufacturing plant, it's the greatest thing of all time. Because you do get stuck in that, you're looking at the same thing every day, day in, day out, and you don't stop and breathe sometimes. And that's what this third party forces you to do. Come in and breathe and see things from the outside, see what other folks are doing, or ask those mundane questions that you didn't even think about. So the later half of that is also we need to maximize our meetings with good debates and team unity. Now, there is nothing wrong with a good, healthy argument with a coworker, an employee. There is nothing wrong with a good, healthy argument. However, we as people hate arguments. We hate to have that confrontation, so we tend to just skip around it. We tend to just be too kind to each other. I'm not saying that we have to shout at each other and throw tools at each other, but a good, healthy debate is a very good exercise for your team. You may not win the argument, but you're going to expose the things that are wrong and you're going to fix them. I guarantee it.
And let's be honest, this is where that constructive criticism is key. And it's not that you're a bad person. It's not that you have dumb ideas or horrible ideas or whatever, right? I think this is where we as a society need to kind of put our big boy pants on and understand that we're not perfect and we don't always have the best ideas, and there are other ways to do things, and constructive criticism is a key to growth, personal growth, right? Oh my gosh, you got to be able to handle constructive criticism and want it, right? You got to be able to ask for it because it's going to make you better as a person, as an employee, as whatever.
Yeah, and on the other side too, I think you said it well too. There's a person in your meeting as well that's the silent one that's afraid to bring their meeting or their topic up in the meeting because they feel like they're going to get criticized so much. They're going to get, that's a stupid idea. I think it was Simon Sinek. It was one of the big motivational guys said that, the most valuable place is the graveyard, because we take almost 90% of our ideas to our grave with us because we're too crippled by the fact that we want to bring them to the table for fear that we're going to get criticized. I don't care where you are in life, you're going to contribute in anything that you do. So you cannot be crippled by your fear of not saying what's on your mind. It's an absolute travesty for somebody to sit in a meeting completely silent and not say something. Absolute travesty.
Yep. So
next slide here, are your meetings effective? This book, and I think this is really relevant. I think, as our team on the Rosetta side, we have very good meetings. I always feel like we have really, really good constructive meetings. I will say that I have been a part of them, and some of them that I don't feel are very constructive, and that's the nature of the beast. Sometimes the wheels just aren't rolling well. But in general, in the survey in this book, almost 70% of folks feel that meetings are non-productive. They feel like they have failed debates, and then they don't get commitments from management, which is another big thing. The debates are overrun by one person or two people, and then there's lost contribution. There's ineffective criticism. And then on the other half, you come to an agreement as a whole and you're going to go with this path, but then management fails to follow through. They let that whole entire plan fizzle out. I can't tell you how many times in my previous life that happened. Things just fizzle out. They go to the wayside, and then you're stuck in the same spot. 6 months later, you're doing the same conversation all over again. Absolute terrible.
Yep.
So, next slide, we're going to talk about productive meeting tactics. We need.
There we go.
Got it?
Yep.
Okay. So, productive meeting tactics. Number one, we need to maximize diversity and not talent. We need to not fill the room full of yes men. We need to fill that room with, like I said, anybody that has a pinky, an iota, an eyelash in that game, they need to be a part of that meeting. Now, I'm not saying you need to invite your entire plant to the meeting because, there is something set to be said about the size of the crowd in the meeting. But as you're structuring and shaping your meeting, make sure that you're getting input from all angles and not just the one angle that they're going to tell you everything that you want to hear. Make sure that that structure of that meeting is effective to get the work done that you need to get done.
When I think that there's ways to maybe appoint somebody from each group, right? And not necessarily that it has to be the lead person. It doesn't have to be a foreman. It doesn't have, specifically, it doesn't have to be the lead production guy. It can be, somebody that maybe they delegate that they want in there as their voice, and that would be the person that comes from that department or that division to the meeting to take things back, right? Let them make their selection of who wants to be there, but have their voice there.
Very good. And I think another thing too that you could do is you can also hire a mediator, or you can have somebody act as a mediator. If you're, and this kind of bleeds into the second one, where you make it safe to speak. Now, I've been in meetings before where you actually have to sign a written agreement saying that you will
Oh, Aaron, can you hear me? I think we got a bad
So as
connection.
formal as that. I mean, if your team is not.
Hold on, Aaron. We lost you there for a second.
Okay, sorry. The weather is coming in.
Yes, it's blowing pretty good out here. Jump back to safe to speak. That's where we lost you.
Okay. So you could bring in a mediator, if so be it, to help, run that meeting, to help people speak. I have been in meetings before where people actually, you have to sign an agreement, a written agreement saying that, I'm going to allow everybody to speak at the table. I'm going to validate everybody's opinions, so on and so forth. If your team is that dysfunctional, I hope it's not. So be it. But I think in general, the meeting ideas will be that boils down to culture. You have to have a good culture, and if your folks don't feel safe to speak, you're not going to have an effective meeting. So whatever you need to do to make that happen, you're going to have to do it.
Yeah. Hey, Aaron, can you give me 1 minute? I gotta. You're kind of breaking in and out. I gotta see if I can make my stream a little stronger here. I think we're breaking in and out on people. So give me 1 second.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna give that a shot, Aaron. But I think you're right. I think the weather's messing with my streaming. So let's. I apologize. We're gonna do it one more time. Let's kick back quick to safe to speak because I think you have a great example there, and I think that's where we lost most people. So let's try that again.
Okay. So safe to speak just means that everybody has to feel that comfortness to speak in a meeting. I'll use the example. I was in a meeting before where you actually had to sign a written agreement saying that you'd allow everybody to speak, you would provide value to the table. It actually laid out bullet points of having an effective meeting. Now, I hope that you guys are not that dysfunctional that you have to do something like that. But if you are, so be it. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. In the end, it boils down to just having a good culture. And we circle around that. We're going to circle around that forever. Culture is where it's at. Culture is the key. So if your folks don't feel safe to speak, then they are not going to speak. You have to help that along. As a leader, that's your job.
I agree, and I think that specifically is really tied in with that next bullet point of, prod the quiet, because I think, and you may have a different example, but I know a lot of the quiet comes from, feeling like they're going to be judged or their job may be on the line if they speak up about a specific item that they disagree with. I know, I'll be very honest. I've been in that position before where, not here with Rosetta, but I have been in a position where I haven't agreed with what's going on, or not necessarily agreed with what's going on, but I had some 2 cents that I wanted to put in that would help the conversation, but was uncomfortable about, I don't want to say retaliation, but that thought process goes through people's head, because that was what was going through my head. So you really do have to be open on the front end as the leader of that meeting, as the leadership in the room about that being a safe space, because that does get the quiet to feel comfortable to speak up. At least that was my experience, and that would be my insight onto that one.
Yeah, it is very true. I mean, I think it tends to be, two people. It's the person that's afraid, and it's the person that's kind of the zealot that doesn't want to speak up because they don't want to start an argument. They just want to get it. It's the guy that stands in the back with a cup of coffee and is like, God, can't believe we're having another damn meeting. When is this going to be over? But I'll use another example. The first time that I was invited to a National Precast Concrete Association board meeting, I was invited to sit in and provide input in a project that I was working on. And, here you're sitting in a room with these industry titans. I mean, these guys are the leaders of the National Precast Concrete Association. These are some big names sitting at this table. And I remember sitting there in the bullpen on the side there. And I mean, my hands were all sweaty. My mouth was dry. I mean, I was just like, just nervous beyond all. You didn't want to say anything stupid. I mean, you didn't want to come off as a moron, so you're running through your head all these ideas. And I got up and I swear to God, I blacked out. I don't even know what I said. But then afterward, these industry titans came up to me and shook my hand, and they said, "Thank you for your input. I really appreciate it. You did a really great job presenting that." And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I don't even know what the hell I said. I don't even know. I don't have a clue. But you have to jump past that fear. You have to just let it go, because you will contribute. I mean, no matter what you say, as long as it's not mouth vomit, I mean, you'll contribute some way.
Yeah.
So, next one, be an advocate, not a salesman, which means, you're not up there pitching an idea. You're not up there trying to sell a product to your people. You're trying to be an advocate for what your idea is. And by advocate, you mean you're going to bring something to the table, but you're also going to receive that criticism and that feedback that you so wholeheartedly need. You're not pitching a sale, you're listening. So that's a big one.
Yeah, when I see advocate, I'm sorry, real quick. When I see advocate and salesman, right, true passion for what you believe in, I believe is advocacy. When it's something that you just, when a salesman is something that you're just, right, it's the used car salesman. You don't really care if that one, if this car goes or that car goes, you just want it off the lot, and I apologize to anybody that's ever done used car sales, but that's what I think about advocacy against just trying to sell something that maybe you don't really even care about. Yeah.
Well, and a salesman, you tend to be scripted. You tend to have your 12-step playbook. And advocacy is, like you said, it's caring, it's passion. It's really just being a part of that team. And it's okay if the meeting goes completely in one direction, because that one focus that you have on that one topic was probably really important. It brought all that relief off of everybody's chest that, wow, I can't believe we finally talked about that. I've been waiting to talk about that for months. We finally did it. Yeah. So what? Great.
Yep.
And that, kind of leads into that last point too, is ask non-leading questions, which means, ask open-ended questions. Don't try to lead the conversation with your questions. Don't ask I feel very strongly about that. I'm assuming you feel the same. That's kind of leading that conversation. The question should be said, how do you feel about that? I'm asking you a question, I'm shutting up, and now I'm listening to what you're having to say. So that's the last point on that.
Well, and there you go. I mean, that sums up any really good meeting is you ask the question and then you just shut up and you do what we tend not to do very well as humans, and that's listen, right? Actually just listen to what other people have to say rather than trying to fill in the gaps right away or continue to add your 2 cents. So yeah,
and I went through a leadership course, and that's what I absolutely stink at listening. I'll admit that wholeheartedly. I stink at it, and it took me a leadership course to actually figure that out. But one of the tools that I use for listening when I'm not listening is I'll actually blink my eyes. And what I'm doing internally is I'm telling myself to shut up and listen. So when I blink, like, really an exaggerated blink, it's usually me trying to, hit the reset button and say, shut up and listen. Because for me, I'm always thinking of the next thing to say. So I'm not even really listening to what you're saying. I'm trying to think of what I'm going to say next. And that's just the way that I focus. I've gotten better with it. My wife may disagree with me, but I am getting a lot better at listening, a lot better. So
I don't think you're alone in that category. So.
All right, next slide. So improving unity is a big deal, for creating that really hardy team, creating that team of A players. You start with a team of maybe some A's, some B's, some C's, and some D's, but eventually you want to work all to be A's. And the way that you do that is with unity. Unity is a very strong word. Bringing together for the common good is really what unity speaks to. And I, when you hire people, it's off the street and you don't know where they're going to fit. You kind of have where they're going to fit in the production or in the construction world, but you don't know how they're going to fit as part of a team. And that takes work from them, but it also takes work from your existing team as well. And that's, going through that whole entire unity and creating that brotherhood, if you will, of guys that work together, gals that work together, mixed, whatever, working together for the common good, that unity. So how do we do that? First point, everyone has a voice. Again, we go back to the culture. Everyone has a voice, no matter how big or how small of your organization is. Every person has a voice in your organization. Very, very important.
This is going to be
go ahead.
A really outside the box kind of statement to everyone has a voice. I think that really rings true is that I see every once in a while on LinkedIn and some of the other social media platforms, you see that typically a picture in the statement of, you treat the janitor the same way as you would treat the CEO, or you listen to the janitor the same way as you would listen to the CEO, and however iteration that goes. But if you think about that, the person that probably has the best beat of what is going on, from the ground, right, is the janitor, because nobody's afraid, right? You're not necessarily that figure that's going to fire you. You can have a common conversation, an open conversation. That's the mentality that I think everybody has to understand, is that we shouldn't even have the voice of what position we're in. It's a commonality voice, right? That, whether you're a janitor or a CEO, that voice is the same strength.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. And, you really fear, when you walk through your crew, whether it's manufacturing or wherever you're at in your world, like I said before about all your ideas going to bed with you when you die. I mean, think of how many ideas as you're walking through your floor the next time, or walking through your construction site next time. Just think every person that's on that has at least one idea. And if that was brought through to fruition and grown upon, I mean, that's a very valuable thing. So think about that next time.
Yeah.
Next point, you need to commit even if you disagree. And this is big on the leadership side. So you can have a meeting that completely blows up in your face. You came with an idea and it switched over 180 degrees from where you thought it was going to be. You as a leader have to commit to that. If that's the consensus of the group, you have to commit to that, even if you have a hard time with it. It's going to do, for tenfold for that unity, for that group, that togetherness, that camaraderie is going to grow. Even if it's a failing idea, the fact that you stood behind it and supported it is going to do wonders for your group. So that is very, very important.
100%. You can't go in thinking that, whatever that comes out of this, I'll do my own thing anyways, right? I'm just going to give everybody a chance to say something. I'm going to do everything, or maybe I won't, go 100% after it. Like, commitment is a big deal. It just shows pride in what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Next one, confront the prima donna. This was really prevalent in sports, really prevalent in sales, because there's always the guy that's got the really big ego. The guy that, it's just kind of, they just have that aura about them. So they're going to try to take over that meeting. They're going to try to manhandle that meeting. The example they use in the book is there was a post-Jordan era Bulls game where Scottie Pippen just up and walked off and sat down on the bench and said, "I'm done." They ended up winning the game, but it was no thanks to Scottie Pippen. And Bill Chamberlain actually confronted him in the back in the locker room and said, that was absolute bullshit. You left us out to dry. I mean, you're supposed to be a leader of the team. What are you doing? I mean, that's, like I said, it's really common in sports. I mean, I've coached many teams where there's, one or two prima donnas on the team. But like I said, you're going to have that every once in a while. You're going to have that high ego person really try to speak on their soapbox, and sometimes they have to get off of it, and you have to confront them as a leader. That's very important.
Yeah, and this is definitely a spot where you have to understand the personalities that you're going to deal with, because of that prima donna type of interaction is going to come from specific personality types, and specific personality types make great positions. So not always, but typically salesmen are of a certain trait, right? That you may get more of the prima donna type of, and I'll throw myself out there. I mean, I get it. Sometimes you like to think that your stuff doesn't stink as much as the next person, but I think if you understand the personality traits and how you confront them and how you have a conversation with them is huge. There's a great series of books that we can go into at a whole other time that talks about understanding the personality that you're going to be presenting to or talking to, and what that means for how you present as well. Just to keep things open and to go along with what we're saying here with the unity of the group and how to have an effective meeting. I'm not saying that you need to tiptoe around them, because that's not what we do. But understand the different personalities that are going to be in there, and that'll help with at least in my opinion, with the prima donna side of it.
Yeah, it definitely does, and that's a very good point that you bring up. Understanding your personality types, like these tests, like the IQ-Max testing. There's a few other ones I can't think of off the top of my head. But understanding how that person understands you is very, very important, and many times overlooked. It's a very hard thing as a person to try to read people and understand how they tick, and that real. But if you can understand that, that'll really help you talk, especially to these prima donnas, if you understand what's making them tick. A very hard thing to do.
Yep.
Number 4, sharpen the team goal. So understand that you're still part of a team. You're still working towards one goal. So make sure that you're constantly sharpening that. You're constantly working towards that. Make sure that no matter what the outcome of that meeting, that it still fits in with your goal set, fits in, that alignment with your core principles. Make sure that you're not losing that sight, that vision. Still working towards that goal. Very important.
I like the next one. It's kind of like Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, no politics. No politics is really key. I mean, no more water cooler conversations about he did this, she said that. I mean, that's just common sense, right? I mean, you learn that in grade school. We forget it every once in a while because people love to gossip. It's just the way it is. I don't care, where you come from, if you're male, female, whatever. People love gossiping. People love knowing that hot tidbit of news that they can spread and spread and spread. But you got to knock it off. I mean, I don't know what. I mean, I'm guilty of it. 100%.
Yep.
But you got to knock it off. It's like, I have a thing for red vine licorice, and if I keep going to that red vine licorice, I'm gonna just become a fat load. But it's the same thing. You got to have that discipline. You got to just knock it off. Let it go. It'll solve itself. So,
yep.
No politics.
I like it. I think that's all that needs to be said about that.
All right. We're probably running short on time. Yeah.
Yep. So
imagine me
scorecards.
Parking down red vine licorice, man. I love it. So just to wrap it up, there's a scorecard in this book, and it's really good. It's just kind of a pulse check on where you're at with your meeting. So if you want to evaluate your team, yourself, your meetings, this is a good way to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask ourselves these 4 questions. 1 and 2 attribute to you yourself, or you can attribute it to a certain person in that meeting. And then 3 and 4 speak to the actual group as a whole. What you're going to do is you're going to ask yourself this question, and you're going to rank yourself from 1 to 7. 7 being you completely agree with the statement, or 1 being you completely disagree. So question number 1, I made good contributions, or he or she made good contributions to debates and say what they or I truly think. Number 2, I or he or she always buys into the decisions made by the team and works to implement them. So again, ranking yourself from 1 to 7 or 7 to 1, whichever way you look at it, you're going to plot it on the graph on the next slide here. What you're going to do is the first question, you're going to plot it on the horizontal axis. And the second question, you're going to plot it on the vertical axis. And as you can see, the horizontal axis speaks to the good fight, meaning your internal argument. And then the vertical axis speaks to unity or group. So let's bounce back now and ask ourselves questions 3 and questions 4. Question 3 being, my team debates well and everyone says what they truly mean. And number 4, everyone buys into the decisions made and works hard to implement them. So you put those plots on there and you kind of see, which, if you think about this graph as quadrants, with your split line at 3.5 and 3.5, where does your group and where do you fit on that meeting? Were you an anarchist? Were you just a complete zealot in that meeting? You wanted nothing to do with it? Move over to the right. Were you trying to undermine the meeting? Were you trying to control? Were you trying to dictate it? Move up the unity chain. Are you in the group thinker quadrant, which means your group got along really well, but maybe you kind of diverged and maybe it turned into more of a buddy-buddy session where you didn't really get much done, but everybody kind of agreed to what you're doing. And then obviously where you want to be is in that last quadrant, fight and unite, where you're doing healthy debate. You're sorting through the stuff that's really making those gears come to a grinding halt, but you're working together as a whole. One person's not carrying the load. You're not throwing people under the bus. No politics. You're working towards that common goal. So it's just a good pulse check. And, if anybody wants to summarize or anything, I'd be happy to summarize it and send it to you in an email, or a spreadsheet or something so you can lay it out. And it's a good kind of a way just to summarize where you're at in that meeting. Was that meeting a good, effective use of your time? Now, you circle back to the start where we talked about how our morning production meetings or our morning job meetings were so worthless because they were just a walkthrough of what we're going to do. Everybody's in zombie mode. Okay, start ranking some of those meetings and start thinking about topics and discussions that can really provide more value to those meetings, kind of circling it all together.
Well, and I real quick, on the construction side, on the landscape, hardscape construction side, when I used to hold the morning meeting and go over what was going on, outside of putting together this and having the structure of the meeting. One of the other things that I felt was really important is 2 things that we always did. One, they were 15 minutes or less, unless we really had something that was a massive topic to go over, but 15 minutes or less. And we did it without chairs. We would never bring chairs in. I took my office chair out or didn't sit in it so that we all stood there, because then nobody's getting comfortable and we're not going off topic. We're not leaning back in the chair. It made the meeting concise. Everybody's standing, they're engaged because it's going to be 15 minutes or less, right? That's what we did. I'm not saying that's what everybody has to do, but that's what we did to keep them on topic, moving, and hopefully productive.
How did you guys, when you guys did those meetings, did you stand in a certain fashion? Did you stand like in a presenter and attendees setting, or was it all just kind of a hodgepodge of people? How did you stand in that meeting? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, it was just in my office. So you think about your standard, I don't know, whatever, 12 by 12 or whatever office space,
Yeah.
right where my desk was, I would make sure that we were all kind of circled up, right? I didn't I didn't stand on my side of the desk with everybody on the other side of the desk. We brought everybody in and got them in there as comfortable as possible. It was never and I don't know if that was intentional, right? At least I didn't think to myself, oh, we need to make sure we're all commingled in here so it's not me presenting to them. I'm not going to say I was that smart. I just made it so that we were all comfortable.
Sure. Yeah, you brought up a good point, the circular, and I'll bring this up. I was thinking about this while you were saying this. I learned this in my leadership course, and I've seen this before, where, we sometimes we don't think about the actual presentation of the meeting and how we're standing. I think it's great that you didn't use chairs, because chairs are kind of that relaxation, or, it allows people to sit down and check their phones during the meeting. Excuse me. But one of the really effective ways of having a good group meeting like that is actually standing in a circular pattern. One, because it exposes everybody sees everybody front and center. And the circular fashion, it just feels natural. There's a certain comfort level. The circle is the strongest shape. The arch is the strongest shape. So if the group is strong, nothing can penetrate from the outside. Your backs are facing out. You're facing, your face is facing in. And I know, you don't think about those things. Like, you don't think about having those structured meetings. I know we can't now because of social distancing, but when you do get back to it, when you can have group meetings, a circular pattern for your group is actually one of the most positive things that you can do to have a good, effective meeting.
Well, you just brought up a great point. I think things are going to, obviously, I wish I could say everything is going to go back to normal. I just don't think it is. And I think there's some key things that are going to be great that they don't go back to normal. And some of that is the expediency of which people are evolving on technology. So let's just say that in certain sales groups or certain groups, maybe this is the new meeting, right? And maybe not all the time, but this is going to be the new meeting. To have an effective meeting, to take where we once were able to stand in a circle and communicate in a group and all that, if that is going to change, these are great meetings. The key to this meeting being effective is that you don't allow people to have their cameras off, right? And I've been in, I do it, right? Our Rosetta meetings, sometimes I don't always have my camera on, and it's not because I'm, in another room necessarily and trying to hide from the meeting. There's that vulnerability of being in front of everybody all the time that I think is great, because then everybody's on the same playing field. The vulnerability of not having, of everybody in the circle looking at each other. The boss is no longer, right? The boss is no longer behind the desk in that power position. Everybody's in the same vulnerability. I believe that to be the same if we continue on with these video meetings, that you want everybody to have the camera on and everybody to be present to everybody else. And then everybody's on the same playing field, and you don't have those thoughts that go through your mind when the camera's not on. So,
good point. Very good point.
That was my 2 cents. I think you're right. I think we're going a little long. Anything else that you want to add into this that we haven't hit on or that's on your mind?
No, I don't think so. I mean, this is I love this topic. Like I said, I think you can get a lot done in a meeting if the meeting is effective and the right players are at the table. That's kind of the take-home message. And don't lose sight of a good, effective meeting. I think it's very easy for us to get so busybodied up that we just can't make the time to have a meeting, and that's a failure on our part. If we don't take the time, it's going to hurt us worse. So take the time to have a good, effective meeting.
Agreed. Have nothing else to add to that. So next week episode, or week 6 episode
next week we
6.
are actually going to we are going to actually we're in section 8. We're going to talk about the sins of too much collaboration. So we're going to kind of play our devil's advocate of what we just spoke about today. But it's good. It's good conversation. There is such thing as too much collaboration, too much chattiness. Generally, it probably follows along the lines of politics, but there is something to be said about too much collaboration. So we'll be working in that realm next week.
Awesome. And that's section 8, you said?
Section 8 in the book. Yep.
Awesome. So section 8, and next Monday, 11:30 Central Standard Time. And Aaron, as usual, it's good to see you. I believe you and I will see each other in about an hour, anyways. Again, so thanks everybody that was on board and watching, and we'll see everybody next week. Thanks, Aaron.
Have a great week, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.